You say you're just helping, just being supportive, just being there for people. But there's a strange feeling underneath it. When someone stops needing you, something in you feels quietly unsettled. Not angry, not exactly sad, just less important. And if you're honest, sometimes you even feel more comfortable when people rely on you. Almost like being needed gives you a place in the world. So the real question isn't why you help people. The question is, why does being needed feel so necessary? It often shows up in small moments. A friend calls you with a problem. You immediately drop what you're doing. Someone asks for advice. You spend hours thinking about the perfect answer. A family member needs help with something simple. You feel strangely satisfied solving it. Helping feels natural. But something interesting happens when the situation changes. When people become independent, when they stop asking, when they figure things out on their own, instead of relief, you feel a quiet emptiness. You might even wonder, did I do something wrong? Or worse, maybe I'm not that important anymore. This is where the pattern becomes subtle. Your identity slowly organizes around being useful. You become the reliable one, the problem solver, the listener, the responsible one. And over time, people start expecting it. But inside your own mind, something else is happening. Your brain is beginning to associate worth with usefulness, not with who you are, but with what you do for others. And that small shift quietly changes everything. But here's the important part. This pattern doesn't mean you're manipulative. It doesn't mean your kindness is fake. In fact, the opposite is usually true. Most people who feel this way are deeply empathetic. They genuinely care. The desire to help others is real. But psychology shows that human behavior rarely comes from just one motive. There are layers. Underneath compassion, there can also be identity. Underneath generosity, there can also be security. Your brain may have learned something early in life. Being needed is one of the safest ways to belong. And once the brain learns that lesson, it rarely forgets. To understand why this happens, we need to look at something psychologists call contingent self-worth. This is when your sense of value depends on meeting certain conditions. Some people feel worthy when they succeed, some when they are admired, others when they are liked. But for some people, their brain ties self-worth to being useful, meaning, I matter when I'm helping. This pattern often develops through reinforcement. Your brain runs on a simple reward system. When you help someone and they respond with gratitude, your brain releases dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine signals reward. Oxytocin signals social bonding. So your brain records a powerful association. Helping others gives appreciation, gives connection, gives reward. Over time, your brain builds a shortcut. A mental model that quietly says, if I want connection, I should be useful. Think of it like becoming the toolbox in a room. When something breaks, everyone comes to you. You fix things. And while you're fixing them, you feel valuable. But the problem with being the toolbox is that people only open it when something is broken. And if nothing needs fixing, the toolbox just sits quietly in the corner. That's where the emptiness comes from. Not because people stopped caring, but because your brain learned to measure belonging through usefulness, and that measurement is incomplete. So how do you change this pattern without losing your kindness? The goal is not to stop helping. The goal is to expand how your brain defines worth. Here are 4 principles that help retrain that system. First, start observing the automatic urge to fix. Behavioral psychology shows that habits become visible before they become changeable. When someone shares a problem, notice the immediate impulse to solve it. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself, am I helping because they need help, or because I need to feel useful? This small pause interrupts the automatic reward loop in your brain. A friend complains about work. Instead of immediately offering solutions, you simply listen. Your brain learns that presence, not just problem solving, creates connection. Your brain currently links value with function. So intentionally spend time with people where you serve no role, no advice, no solving, just being there. This retrains the brain's social circuitry. Neuroscience research shows that simple shared presence activates bonding networks even without problem solving. Meeting a friend for coffee and talking about random things. Nothing gets fixed, but connection still happens. Your brain slowly learns, I'm allowed to belong without being useful. Identity theory shows that when one role dominates your self-image, losing it creates anxiety. So begin developing identities that aren't based on helping. Curiosity, creativity, exploration. Instead of always being the reliable helper in your friend group, you might start sharing your interests, your thoughts, or your humor. Your brain begins to store new data. I can be valued for being interesting, not just helpful. This one feels uncomfortable, but it's powerful. When you constantly solve problems for others, you unintentionally reinforce a role where your value depends on their dependence. Allowing people to struggle slightly restores balance. Psychologically, this shifts relationships from dependence-based to mutual. A coworker asks for help on something simple. Instead of immediately taking over, you guide them briefly and let them finish. The relationship stays equal, and your brain learns something new. Connection doesn't disappear when you stop fixing everything. So the real shift is simple. Instead of seeing yourself as the toolbox, you start seeing yourself as the person in the room, a person who can help, but who also belongs even when nothing needs fixing. Helping becomes a choice, not a requirement for worth. Your kindness stays, but the pressure disappears. The strange thing about being needed is that it can feel like love, but they are not the same thing. Being needed is about function. Love and belonging are about presence. And the moment your brain begins to understand that difference, something quietly changes. You stop asking, "Where am I useful?" and start noticing something simpler. You were never just the toolbox. You were always part of the room.